Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and now he's pitching to put whole milk back into schools more than a decade after the switch was made to 2%.
And so we're going to talk to our 9 News medical expert about this, Dr. Kohli, because many of us are like surprised by this, and we're wondering what the argument is to do this, why do this. We also know there's problems with obesity in our country. I mean, is this a good thing?
Yeah, so I mean, for 40 years, we've been talking about drinking low-fat milk,
right?
Skim milk or fat-free milk, 1% or 2%. So this is a big change because after 2012, every school out there had low-fat milk. So why are we talking about putting whole milk back in school? So let's first talk about why we switched to low-fat. And the reason we did, to your point, Kim, is that 20% of adolescents are currently obese in the United States. And we know that the calorie count of milk is just so high. So that was a big driver. In fact, what we saw is after we made the switch, not just in milk, but also more, natural foods, vegetables, what have you, there was a steady decrease in BMI or body mass index, suggesting less obesity, especially in households that made less than $50,000 a year. So it worked to get people thinner, especially in some of the socioeconomically disadvantaged parts of town, and it has the same vitamins that whole milk does.
Not to derail the whole conversation, but the whole milk in schools thing, where would you put that on the list of things that he needs to be putting his focus on? I mean, we really are talking about measles becoming a headline around the country and things like that. Is the whole milk thing just a noise to distract us, or is it really important?
It's not, in my opinion, important, and neither in the medical community, because every guideline for the last four decades has recommended low-fat milk. Now, perhaps some schools may want to liberalize those, but to your point, it's not a good idea to put all the other things that we're dealing with, which is childhood mental health problems, substance use in our adolescents, including marijuana, which many people consider safe and is linked to heart attacks and strokes.
Vaping. The list go on.
Accidents, all of the types of things that we really need to think about in schools above, put those below whole milk, which to me would be 999 out of 1,000 in terms of the priorities of what we ought to be talking about. But there are some arguments for whole milk, and there are some people who say maybe we should have more whole milk because it has more fat, and dairy fat is actually supposed to be good for some cardiometabolic conditions. They also say that the absorption of certain fat-soluble vitamins would be better in whole milk than it would be in skim milk.
I'm an old guy, went to a ritzy school. We had whole milk, skim milk, or chocolate milk.
Did you?
Yeah.
We did have chocolate milk,
yeah.
but I don't remember.
Which is a solid choice. I'm not a doctor, but I know.
But I guess my question is also, I've been hearing so much about hormones in milk and trying not to expose our children to it at too young of an age. I mean, is that part of it, or could that potentially be?
So it should be a part of it, but it's not a part of it. And to me, that's actually a more important conversation, is what type of milk they're getting exposed to, whether it's organic milk, whether it has hormones, whether there is good nutritional value in that milk, whether it's ultra processed, because sometimes the pasteurization process can change the nutrients and the content. Milk, as you know, is a staple for children, and it's high in protein, potassium, vitamins, so it's a really important thing for our kids to have. But making sure it's good, high quality milk, I think, is more important than fixating on how much fat is in the milk, because whether it's low fat or whole fat, it's really marginal differences in terms of the nutritional content.
So the schools will have control, but let's say a child from 5 to 13, somewhere in that age range. What would you tell a parent as far as the milk that they should be buying or giving to their children, and how important milk is?
Yep, so I would say a few things. One, if they're under 5, don't give them any plant-based milks. Those are not real milks, they're processed, they don't have the micronutrients. So the soy milk, the oat milk, the almond milk, the coconut milk, not good.
Before 5 years old.
Right, even after, I would say sort of veer away from them. You don't want to put too much attention on those types of milks. You really want to personalize the type of milk your child drinks according to their weight. So if there's somebody who's struggling with obesity on the higher end of that BMI spectrum, definitely go with non-fat or 1%. But if there's somebody who's on the lower end of their weight, in fact, we're having more and more eating disorders as well, as we have more teenagers fixating on their weight, not drinking anything that has fat in it, then you really want to encourage the whole milk, because it helps them to feel, more satisfied and can help cope with some of those problems as well.
And water. And I know you don't want anything else in any of those other things and chemicals in it. I know that. Okay. All right, Dr. Kohli, thanks for the advice, and for all the parents out there as well. You can find more with Dr. Kohli at 9news.com/Dr. Kohli.